elder who claims to have authority over me to tell me what's right and what's wrong, to tell me what's best. And so that's a conflict that's happening in church. We're losing our young people. We're losing over 50% of our young people just out of high school, let alone, you know, others that are older than that. And I think that's part of it. That's some of it. And so we have to get these young people motivated into being a part of the church and a part of the decision-making process. If you read my book, I know you've had a class in the book for a while, and the Successful Work Environment talks about this idea of getting people involved in the decision-making process. Let them get some skin in the game. Let them feel a part of what's going on. That's really something young people are excited about and favor. But in positional churches, that's not happening. And so they get discouraged. Some of them just leave. We have a lot of people leaving, going to the community church. Why are you supposed to go to the community church? Because there's much more involvement and much more relational leadership in the community churches than we see in the Church of Christ. So it's a problem for us. And I don't think we're going to get solved until we begin to look at our leadership and make changes. Because what happens with the leadership is what really affects the church as a whole. So I think that's what's developed over a period of time. And then when you get in that rut, it's hard to get out of it because it's comfortable. And when you're a positional kind of a leader, you want the authority, you expect the authority, you like the authority. Sometimes you got men who may not have any authority otherwise, but they're all of a sudden an elder. And now they think, you know, I'm an elder now and I've got authority and respect, which I didn't have before or whatever. And it's kind of hard to give that up in the sense of dictating, in the sense of telling people what to do, and begin now learning to relate to people, because when you're a relational leader, you've got to get out with people to a great degree. I mean, you've got to be with people. You've got to be knowing, you have to know what people are feeling, what they're struggling with, what's a problem, what problems they have. You have to be able to communicate. That's why we're talking about communication. You have to be able to communicate your love and concern for people. And if you're an elder, for instance, who meets with the other elders and you make decisions and you hand them down kind of like edicts, then at the church building you stand over the corner of the foyer all the time and don't really talk to anybody. I've seen elders that do that. They think that's perfectly right. They don't really talk to anybody. They don't say much to anybody. They don't get much involved in conversation with anybody, but they stand in the foyer and they're there to make sure everything's running smoothly. That's it. And they meet with the elders, make those decisions. As long as they're making those decisions, they're fulfilling their God-given role as an elder. But that's, as one teacher used to say, hogwash. You know what hogwash is? If you've never washed a hog, you don't know what hogwash is. But if you have one, I have. If you have washed hogs, then you got a real feeling where hogwash is. It's about the lowest element you can think of. But anyway, it is hogwash. So, by the way, I didn't plant him there to ask that question today. It's my son-in-law. But it's a good question. And it's hard to break the mold. And that's all we're trying to do, is inform some people as to what the Bible says and hoping they'll break the mold. When I wrote this book, back in 2008, I think, I just wrote it because I'd had some frustrations with elderships over the years. And it's something that's from the heart. And I wanted at least to say something, you know. And I owned a publishing company, so I could say it. If I never sold any books, then don't worry about it. But it's been amazing how it's been pretty popular here recently. So they were making an impact on Brotherhood. But you've got young people here like Jonathan and others, and that's good. And this is a good place for them to be, to listen to some of these things and to realize, you know, if I have a chance somewhere down the road to have a family and raise kids that are believers and be an elder, then I've learned some things about it. But not just being an elder, you learn some things about being a father too. The same principles apply. I mean, I've got some fathers. I remember, you know, Lakeview, when I preached there for 25 years, and of course it was a big military congregation, had over 40% military. And I can remember some of those sergeants, you know, I mean, the kids would tell me, my dad just put the duty roster on the refrigerator, you know, and he says, there it is, I'll get it done, you know. So he gets home, they'll be put in the penitentiary if they don't get it done, you know, this kind of stuff. That's it. They think the duty roster is going to say everything, you know. And you say there's a duty roster, you salute me and get the job done. So. And then they go and take charge of maybe the worship service. I've had a couple of those. Military guys retired, you know, so they put the duty roster up on the bulletin board, see? And they told everybody the duty roster's up there, go check it. Then after 2 or 3 months of that, and nobody's checking it hardly at all, and they're way behind, and they can't get people, blah, blah, blah. What's going on? This is what we did in the military. It works in the military. This is a volunteer force here, folks. It doesn't work that way. So these are the kind of things that dads need to learn too. That you don't run the house and the family and the home like a military unit. You just don't. And you've got to be involved in people's lives. You've got to know your kids, your family, your wives, the needs that they have. And so Ephesians 5 is the most powerful text on fathering, I think, you'll find. Because it really deals with primarily what's your responsibility, meeting the needs of my wife. And then Ephesians 6:4 says, do not provoke your children to wrath. Why pick on fathers? Why not mothers? I've always asked that question, you know. Why not mothers? What's this deal about just being fathers being picked on here by? Because fathers are the leaders. They set the tone. It's their job to make sure they can do all they can to build up their children in the way that they should go. And as Solomon says, I'm not depart from it. Yes?
Earlier, one of your lessons, you talked about the light bulbs that were in one night. You noticed it. Well, in some places, it just goes undone.
What is?
It goes undone.
Yeah, I know.
But if you see it, you should do it. It needs to be done. Painted.
It needs to be done, yeah. And that's a part of elders' work. I mean, they are superintendents to a degree. I mean, the Greek word episkopos, which has been translated bishop in some of the older translations, and of course the Catholic Church and others use it, translate it that way. But actually, it means overseer or superintendent. And if you look at the Greek word and the definition of it, that's what it means. You oversee, you superintend. That doesn't mean you get out there and put in light bulbs, okay? You make sure those things get done. They are not high priority, but you don't ignore them either. And that's why you have deacons to do that work. But even with deacons, they're not. This is another thing I deal with in teaching and leadership. Even deacons aren't just to put light bulbs in, you know. I mean, we got this theory and mentality that says deacons do the physical work and elders do the spiritual work. Well, when you look at the qualifications of the deacon, how different is it from the qualification of the elder? What do you think? Can you remember? Having believing kids, that's a big difference. Anything else? So is he supposed to be, huh? One wife. The elder's got to have one wife, you know. We don't let elders have two wives. Yeah. Maybe deacons could sneak in on the next wife, I don't know. See, they both have to have one wife, they both have to have children. Now, the elders have to have believing children, where it says that the deacons just have to have children that aren't too far out of line, whatever, their behavior. But that's about it. See, so we're looking at spiritual qualifications for an elder, but when it comes to deacon, all he just puts in light bulbs. So we'll just get somebody that puts in light bulbs. He doesn't have to have any leadership ability. And so this is a big thing I deal with from time to time in seminars, and that is that deacons are spiritual men who are being trained and developed and forged into spiritual elders. You should have deacons that are coming up. Now, they're not all going to do that, of course. But you should have some of your deacons coming up who are already planning on being elder. We've got a guy right now at Puyallup, a young carpenter, beautiful family, young family. She just had a baby. And they're both very spiritual and involved. And we tapped him to take over the worship service because we want to see him as a deacon someday. And I was talking to him about that one day. He says, yeah, I want to be a deacon. I'm working towards that because it says deacons must first be proved. But, you know, I don't want to stop there. I said, you don't? I said, what, do you want to be president or something? He said, no. No, he said, I want to be an elder someday. He said, I'm watching you guys. Oh, that's it. You didn't see that? Whoa. If he hadn't said that, I felt pretty good that day. But that was a bummer day after he said that. But I appreciate it. But he knows what he wants to be. Now, he's not looking at it as a political position. He's looking at it as a time to serve. And he's going to have the skill, and I think he'll have the ability to do that because he's a spiritual man. He's growing and developing. So I have no doubt in my mind he'll be an elder someday. What's wrong with aspiring to be an elder? As long as you're not doing it for filthy lucre's sake, you know what filthy lucre is, don't you? I can make fun about that one. I won't. That's just money. But anyway. But if you're not doing it, that's what scriptures say. Don't do it for filthy lucre's sake.